Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. When I first installed those cameras, it wasn't about spying or mistrust. It was about safety. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Our neighborhood had gone through a few break-ins recently, and my wife, Claire, often stayed home alone while I worked long hours. It seemed like a reasonable decision at the time, something a protective husband would do. I bought a set of small, wireless cameras and positioned them around the house. One near the front door, one in the living room, one covering the garage, and another at the back porch. The installation took me a weekend. I remember standing in the hallway afterward, looking at the small green lights, thinking I had done something responsible. The plan was to tell Claire about it. I even rehearsed in my head how I casually mentioned that it was just for security, just to help us both feel safe. But one thing led to another. She was having a stressful week at work. I was juggling deadlines. Days passed, and somehow I just didn't say it. It wasn't intentional at first. But once the days turned into weeks, I realized how strange it would sound if I brought up now. Oh, by the way, I installed hidden cameras around the house a few weeks ago. It felt wrong, suspicious even, so I said nothing. At first, I barely checked the footage. The app sat quietly on my phone, sending me occasional motion alerts. Most of the time, it was just a mailman or our cat wandering through the living room. But one evening, one random, unplanned moment, everything changed. That night, I was working late. It was close to midnight when I finally shut my laptop and checked my phone. There was a notification, motion detected, living room camera. I opened it without thinking much. The screen loaded slowly. And then, there she was, Claire, sitting on the couch, holding her phone. The TV was on, but she wasn't watching. She looked nervous. Her hands fidgeted, and she kept glancing toward the window. I frowned. Maybe she was waiting for someone to pick something up, or she heard a noise outside. I told myself not to overthink. But then, she stood up, straightened her hair, and walked toward the door. A minute later, someone knocked. It was late, too late for a visitor. My chest tightened as I watched her open the door. A man stepped inside. I paused the video, my mind racing. I didn't recognize him. Tall, slightly unshaven, dressed in casual clothes. Claire smiled at him, not a friendly neighbor smile. A warm one, a familiar one. I unpaused the feed, my hands cold. They talked quietly, too softly for the camera to catch. Then they moved to the couch. My pulse hammered my ears as I watched her sit close. Too close. The kind of closeness that says more than words ever could. For a long time, I just sat there, watching, frozen. Every thought collided in my head. Maybe he was a friend. Maybe she was helping someone. Maybe. But my gut knew. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, replaying the footage, every second of it burning into my memory. The way she looked at him, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way he reached for her hand. I closed the app and stared at the wall, numb. The next morning, I acted normal. I made coffee. I smiled when she came into the kitchen, hair messy from sleep, wearing the same robe she wore last night. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning," I replied, forcing a smile. It felt like I was living in two worlds, the one she saw and the one I now knew. For the next few days, I couldn't stop checking the cameras. It became a habit, a painful one. Every motion alert made my stomach twist. I'd open the app, half hoping to see nothing, half terrified of what I might find. Sometimes she'd be alone, cooking, reading, humming to herself. Other times, she'd be on the phone, pacing the living room, her voice low and tense. I couldn't hear the words, but her expression told enough. One evening, she left the house around 7 p.m., saying she was meeting a friend for dinner. I checked the garage camera an hour later. Her car was still there. I switched to the living room feed. The man was back. They sat close again, talking, laughing quietly. I watched in silence, my heart breaking in slow motion. I couldn't look away, even when I wanted to. It was like watching my own life collapse in real time. I remember thinking, how long has this been going on? Was it before the cameras? Was this what she did while I worked late? Thinking I was providing for our future? Each night, I told myself I'd confront her, that I'd sit her down, tell her the truth about the cameras, and demand an explanation. But each morning I hesitated. How do you start a conversation like that? How do you tell someone you watched them betray you? Days blurred together. I went to work, came home, smiled through dinner, pretended nothing was wrong. But inside, I was unraveling. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the pretending. Watching her laugh at my jokes, kiss me goodnight, plan weekend trips, all while I knew the truth. Felt like torture. One Saturday afternoon, she suggested we invite a few friends over. It'll be nice to have people here again, she said with a bright smile. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. That night, when the house was quiet, I opened the footage again. This time, I watched from the beginning. From the first day I installed the cameras. I wanted to see if there had been signs I missed. Something subtle. Some clue that should have warned me. And there they were, tiny, forgettable moments that suddenly made sense. The phone calls she'd taken in another room. The sudden change of clothes before I got home. The way she'd seemed distracted, distant, like her mind was somewhere else. I had ignored them all. By the time I reached the most recent clip, my heart felt heavy, hollow. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal itself or the realization that I had trusted her so blindly. It wasn't anger that filled me. Not yet. Just deep, quiet disappointment. The next morning, I looked at her differently. Every gesture, every word, every smile, I questioned them all. I began noticing details I had never seen before. The way she'd check her phone and quickly turn the screen away. The faint perfume that wasn't hers. The tiredness in her eyes when I mentioned love or future plans. I started keeping my distance. She noticed. "Are you okay?" she asked one night as we lay in bed. "I'm fine," I said quietly. She turned to face me, searching my expression. "You've been distant lately. Is something wrong at work?" I wanted to tell her the truth right then. I wanted to say, yes, something's wrong. You? But instead, I just nodded and said, "Yeah, just stress." She sighed, rolled over, and went to sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when our marriage had stopped being real. The next evening, something inside me shifted. I opened the app again, not out of curiosity this time, but with purpose. I needed to know everything, to see it through to the end. If she was going to betray me, I needed to face it fully. No more denial. No more pretending. At 8:43 p.m., motion was detected again in the living room. I watched. She opened the door before he even knocked this time. That small detail, the way she was already waiting, hurt more than anything else. They sat close again, talking quietly. I couldn't hear the words, but her smile said everything. She looked happy, comfortable, like she belonged in that moment more than she ever did with me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. It felt like the truth was chaining me there, forcing me to watch what love had turned into. And then suddenly, she stood up and walked toward the back of the house, the hallway that led to our bedroom. I froze. My throat went dry as a man followed her. That was when I stopped the video. My hands were shaking, my chest tight. I didn't need to see more. I already knew. That night, I sat in the dark living room, the glow of the screen reflecting off my face. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. I stared at my phone, the pause frame still showing the empty living room. The camera light blinked softly, recording everything. And for the first time since I installed those cameras, I wished I hadn't. Because sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. It destroys you. I didn't sleep that night. The darkness inside the house felt heavier than usual, like the air itself knew what I had discovered. I sat in the living room, staring at the pause video on my phone, my chest tight and my mind spinning. I kept thinking back to how this started, how innocent it all was. The cameras, the idea of protecting our home, of keeping her safe. I didn't set out to destroy my marriage with a few blinking lights. But here I was, holding proof that everything I believed about us was built on a lie. At some point near dawn, I made myself a cup of coffee. My hands shook as I poured it. I looked around the kitchen, the same space where we had shared hundreds of mornings, laughing, arguing, planning our lives. It all looked the same, yet felt completely different now. The walls, the chairs, the mugs, all of it seemed to mock me. By the time Claire woke up, I had already decided to pretend one more day. Maybe I wasn't ready yet. Maybe I needed to see if she'd confess on her own, if she'd show even the slightest guilt. "Morning," she said sleepily, walking into the kitchen, her hair messy and her smile soft. "Morning," I replied, forcing a calm I didn't feel. She sat down across from me, scrolling through her phone as if nothing in the world was wrong. I watched her carefully, trying to read her face. But she was good, too good. She didn't look guilty or nervous. If anything, she looked peaceful. That calmness broke something inside me. I spent the rest of the day moving through life like a ghost, silent, detached, watching her every move through eyes that no longer saw the woman I married. Every glance she gave me, every touch of her hand, felt staged. By evening, I couldn't hold it in anymore. She was in the living room when I walked in. "Claire," I said, my voice quiet but steady. She looked up, smiling. "Hey, what's up?" "We need to talk." The way her smile faded told me she could sense something serious. She set her phone aside and straightened up. "Okay, what's going on?" I hesitated for a second, my mind screaming not to do it, but I'd lived long enough in silence. "I installed security cameras around the house a few weeks ago." I began. Her brows furrowed. "What? Cameras? You mean like hidden ones?" "Yes," I said, "for safety. At first, I just wanted to make sure you were safe when I wasn't here. I meant to tell you, but I forgot, and then it felt too late." She blinked, confused. "So, why are you telling me this now?" I took a deep breath. "Because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see." Her face went pale. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. I continued, my voice trembling now. "I saw you with him, Claire, the man who's been coming here when I'm gone." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Her eyes widened, her lips parted, and then she looked away, staring at the floor. "Say something," I whispered. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears welling up in her eyes. "You were watching me?" "I was protecting us," I said bitterly. "At least that's what I thought. I never meant to invade your privacy. I just wanted to keep you safe. But instead, I found out I'm the only one who cared." She shook her head, crying quietly. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I said firmly. "I've watched you welcome him into our home. Our home, Claire. I've watched you smile at him, the way you used to smile at me. I don't need to imagine anything. I saw it all." She stood up suddenly, pacing the room, wiping her tears. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear I didn't." "Then why did it?" I asked. She stopped and looked at me, her expression filled with regret. "I was lonely," she whispered. "You were always working, always busy." We stopped talking. I didn't even realize how far apart we'd grown until someone else noticed me. Her words cut deep. "So that's it," I said quietly. "You were lonely, so you invited someone else into our marriage?" "It wasn't like that," she pleaded. "He listened. He made me feel alive again. I thought it was harmless at first, but it got complicated. I didn't know how to stop." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't know how to stop? You had a choice every single time, Claire." She looked away, ashamed. "I know, and I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me." The silence between us was thick, almost suffocating. The air felt heavy with things we'd never said, and now it was all too late. For the first time in a long while, I looked at her not as my wife, but as someone I no longer recognized. "I trusted you," I said quietly, "with everything. And the worst part is, I wasn't even looking for this. I didn't want to catch you. I wanted to feel safe. But now, I'll never feel safe again." Tears streamed down her face. "Please, don't say that. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can—" I shook my head slowly. "No, Claire. Some things can't be fixed. I turned away, trying to hide the tears burning in my own eyes. My voice was barely a whisper when I said, "You've already moved on, you just didn't tell me." For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Finally, she said softly, "What are you going to do?" I took a long breath. "I'm going to leave." Her face crumbled. "Please don't. I made a mistake, but I still love you." "Love," I said, almost laughing. "You don't destroy someone you love, Claire." I went upstairs, grabbed a small suitcase, and began packing. Every sound, the rustle of clothes, the click of the zipper, echoed through the house like the end of an era. She followed me, begging, crying, reaching out to touch me, but I couldn't let her. Not anymore. When I walked to the door, she whispered, "If you walk out now, we'll never come back from this." I stopped, my hand on the doorknob, and turned to her. "We already haven't." Then I left. I spent the next few nights in a hotel, alone. The silence was unbearable at first. My mind replayed everything. The laughter, the years together, the night I installed the cameras. I questioned if I had somehow caused this, if working too hard or being too distant had pushed her away. But deep down, I knew relationships don't crumble because of one person's absence. They break when one partner decides to stop trying. Each night, I scrolled through old photos on my phone, vacations, anniversaries, the day we moved into that house. Every smile looked real. Every moment felt genuine. How could it all have turned into this? A week later, I went back, not to see her, but to collect the rest of my things. The house felt empty, though her car was in the driveway. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in, her eyes red from crying. "I didn't think you'd come back," she said softly. "I came for my stuff," I replied coldly. She nodded, staring down at her hands. "I ended it," she said suddenly, "with him, the day you left." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She looked up at me, desperate. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm sorry. For everything. I lost sight of what we had." I sighed, setting down my bag. "I appreciate that, Claire. But apologies don't erase what I saw. What you did." She stood, tears in her eyes. "If I could undo it, I would." "I know," I said softly, "but we can't undo reality." I packed the last of my things and turned to leave. Before I stepped out, I glanced once more at the cameras. Silent, blinking reminders of truth I could never unsee. Maybe those cameras were meant for protection, but in the end, they protected me in a way I hadn't expected. They showed me the truth, however painful it was. As I drove away, I realized that sometimes closure doesn't come from confrontation or forgiveness. It comes from acceptance, from knowing when to let go. For the first time in a long while, I didn't check the camera feeds. I deleted the app, wiped the data, and turned off my phone. The silence that followed was heavy but clean, like the first breath after a storm. I didn't know where my life would go from here, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never again ignore my instincts. I would never again mistake comfort for love or silence for peace. And maybe, just maybe, the truth, no matter how painful, was better than living a beautiful lie.